Hey, how's it going? How's life? My name is Sophia. Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be doing my May wrap up. But before I get into my May wrap up, there are a couple of things that I need to address. First and foremost, there has been a lot. I haven't been filming for the past couple of weeks, and that is because mentally, emotionally, I just wasn't in the proper headspace to film. For those of you who don't know, which I don't know why you wouldn't know, but a couple of weeks ago there was a murder of yet another black person, and his name was George Floyd. Social media and the media in general has been very engaged with Black Lives Matter. There's been a lot of protests. Recently, it's been dying down on social media, but the protests are still going on. I will leave links for petitions and ways to donate down below. I will also leave a link created by Starla from Starla Reads as well. And while all of this has been going on, there has been a lot of fuckery, a lot of foolishness, particularly pertaining to Black people and the emotions and the need to debate Black people on their emotions. And let me tell you something. If a Black person says something's offensive or problematic, believe them. I've seen it on Twitter where people, non-Black people, feel the need to debate with Black people. My emotions are not up for debate. My humanity is not up for debate. If you don't like it, then please just move on. Move on and take your toxicity with you. But yeah, if you're not supporting Black Lives Matter, if the subject of Black Lives Matter makes you uncomfortable, good. It should make you uncomfortable. People are literally being killed. And if you're anyone who comments down below like all lives matter, I'm just gonna delete your comment and block you from my channel, because I'm tired and I'm not with the shits anymore. Like, I'm done. Another thing I wanted to address was the name change. Now, originally my channel name was Spew Deserves Better, but she, who shall not be named, decided to go on a Twitter rampage, and she decided to hurt a lot of people. So because I don't want my channel to be associated with that, I decided to change my name to Fantasy Book Addict. The third and final thing I would like to address is that I have reached 150 subscribers. And while I should be celebrating, while this should be an amazing moment, I don't feel comfortable celebrating this milestone simply because it took the death of another Black person for people to be checking for me. I've been on this platform for about 2 months now, and in about those 2 months I've only gained about 70 subscribers. And so the fact that in less than 2 weeks my subscriber count has more than doubled, it makes me feel kind of wary. I hope that you enjoy my content. I hope that you're here because you want to see more of me and because you enjoy my content, not because you're looking for a token minority to subscribe to. But yeah, other than that, let's get into all the books I read in the month of May. Alrighty, so for the month of May, I read a total of 5 books, and I ended up DNFing 2. It was an okay reading month. 2 of the books I read I really enjoyed. The other 2 were 3-star reads, low-key kind of disappointing. The first book I read in the month of May was Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. Now, in this book, we are following our main character, Sanchia, as she is in the middle of a heist. She ends up stealing this magical artifact, but things aren't quite what they seem, and our story goes from there. The magic system in this world is very unique. It's basically scrivings. So for example, you could scrive a wheel to make it think that it's falling down a hill, but in reality it isn't. And that's basically their version of technology. And it was very interesting to see how the magic system was used on a day-to-day life. For this book, I really enjoyed I enjoyed all of the characters, at least all of the characters that we're following. I felt very attached to this ragtag crew, and they just stole my heart. I also really enjoyed the humor. If you have a similar sense of humor as I do, I think you'll really enjoy it. The sass, the snark, the sarcasm is through the roof, and I enjoyed every single one of it. It definitely has more of a lighter tone than the majority of the dark fantasy that's really popular today, and I really enjoyed that about this. Another really strong aspect of the story was the plot. Now with the plot, you hit the ground running. Literally in the first couple of pages, it's starting off in the middle of a heist, and there was never a dull moment in this story. Even though I found the magic system very interesting and very easy to grasp in the beginning, I will say that towards the end, it got a bit too complicated for my tiny little brain cells to handle, and I did find myself oftentimes rereading passages to make sure that I got it. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. Another critique I have is that there's no map, and I don't know why. Like, I need maps in my story. Like, I like to visualize. I'm very visual in my mind, and I like to see where we are in relation to the world. And so the fact that this didn't have a map, it didn't take away too much from my enjoyment, but it took away a little bit, just a smidge. But other than that, I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely plan on continuing and would recommend. The next book I read in the month of May, I always forget the months, is going to be The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. So in this story, we are following our main character, Sherazade, as she seeks revenge on the king who murdered her best friend. Now, in this world, the king takes a bride every single day and murders her at dawn, and Sherazade volunteers to be the king's bride, and our story goes from there. Now, I will say that the writing style is very beautiful. For you newbies, I love a good prose. I love prose. The writing style was very beautiful, very prosy, but not too prosy to the point where it dragged the story. I really adored the writing style. I will say that because this story only takes place in the palace, we don't get to see much of the world, and that is something that, as a fantasy reader, I enjoy exploring worlds. I enjoy getting deep dives into lore, geography, and all that stuff, but we didn't get much of that, and it slightly, just a bit, took away from my enjoyment. I also didn't feel that the characters weren't as developed as they could be. The romance was another weak part in my opinion. So Sherazade is trying to get revenge. Like, her goal is to murder the king. Literally, after 3 nights, they start falling in love, and I'm just like, oh, the insta love, that's not it, sis. That's not it. And there's like this one character. This is like a really small thing, but you're introduced to this one character, and literally the moment you're introduced to her, she's like, I'm a spy, and I'm just like, what? You're a horrible spy. What kind of spy goes around, I'm a spy, y'all, I'm a spy? It's like, sis, do you want to get killed? Make it make sense. Probably the biggest issue was that this entire book felt like nothing more than just a setup, and I wouldn't mind that except nothing really happens until like the last 10% of the book. And I was just like, you could have literally chopped this down and then merged it. It could have been just one book. It didn't have to be a duology, in my personal opinion. I still, it was fun. It was a fun, light, quick, and easy read. I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. Would I recommend it to someone who's like heavily into fantasy, who loves extravagant world building, intricate character development, and all that good stuff? No. But like, if you're into a more light fantasy and you love romance in your books, then I would highly suggest picking this one up. The next book I read was actually a DNF for me, and that's going to be the second book in the series, The Rose and the Dagger, also by Renee Ahdieh. Now, I DNF'd this at about 100 pages, and the reason why, like I said in the first book, the character development, in my personal opinion, was lacking just a smidge. And so the author tries to have these character interactions that they're meant to have an impact. They're meant to have a deep, profound emotional impact on the reader. But because the character development and the character relations are so poorly developed, I didn't feel anything. When it was like, when these characters interacted, I didn't feel anything at all. And so that kind of annoyed me, and I was just like, I'm trying to get my TBR down. I have so many books. It's only 25, but in my mind, I have so many books that I would like to get to. And so I would rather spend that time reading a book that I know I'm going to love and adore. So DNF this one, didn't give it a star rating. But yeah, the next book I read in the month of May was a bit of a disappointment, and that is going to be The Girl and the Stars by Mark Lawrence. This is set in the same world as the Red Sister trilogy by Mark Lawrence, and I freaking loved that trilogy. It's honestly one of my favorite trilogies that I've read so far this year. This, however, it just wasn't doing it for me. So in the story, we are following our main character, Yaz, who is part of the Ikta tribe. In the beginning of the story, we're following Yaz and her tribe as they head on to the Pit of the Missing. In the Pit of the Missing, children are thrown in who are different from the rest of the tribe. This world, Abbott, is slowly being consumed by ice. And because of these harsh realities, kids who are different have to be thrown into this pit. And through certain circumstances, Yaz ends up throwing herself down into the pit. I think the reason why I was as disappointed as I was in this one is probably because it wasn't quite what I was expecting. I was expecting a story set place on ice, but instead we got a story that takes place 90% of the time in the caverns, and I wasn't that interested in the setting. Also, I feel like I was comparing this a lot to Red Sister. It happens, I guess. So another thing that took away from my enjoyment was the fact that I wasn't as attached to the characters as I would have liked. When I was reading the Red Sister trilogy, I loved every single character the moment we were introduced to them. Like, they were so well developed in my opinion, and they all stole my heart. But this one, I didn't feel did the same thing, if it makes sense. I don't think that the characters by any means are poorly developed. They just weren't as good as the Red Sister characters. Please don't come for me. The plot wasn't as compelling either. I was just, it felt a little bit like a slog to get through, and I find myself not as interested or as engaged with the plot as I would have liked. I do plan on continuing on with the series. I still have hopes for the series, but yeah, I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read is a graphic novel, and that is going to be Blackbird by Sam Humphries. So in this story, we are following our main character, Nina Rodriguez, I believe her name is, who believes that there is magic in Los Angeles. One day, her sister gets kidnapped by this magical talking tiger situation, and so she goes on a quest to find her. Now, the only reason I picked this up was because there was a hole in my heart that Monstrous left behind, and I needed a graphic novel to fill that void. Unfortunately, this wasn't it. I didn't really care about the story. I didn't care about any of the characters. I just thought that I thought they were one-dimensional, very flat. One-dimensional, two-dimensional, same thing. I thought the characters in the story were very two-dimensional, very flat, not as developed as I would have liked. I also didn't think that the world was fleshed out as much as it could have been. So I think this is another case where I was comparing one graphic novel with the other. So that might have affected my enjoyment. But the world wasn't as fleshed out. The magic wasn't as properly explained as I would have liked it to be. And I'm all for soft magic systems. The magic felt convenient in certain parts of the graphic novel. The pacing felt very off. It felt like a rough draft, and it felt like this could have gone through a lot more edits. I will say that the art style was beautiful. Specifically, like, the fight scenes were very gorgeous and very beautifully done, but that wasn't enough to keep my attention. And another thing that kind of really bugged me actually, was the insta-love between the main character and this god deity type being. I hate insta-love in my stories. If I see insta-love, I will automatically knock it down a star, because that is how much I hate it. And seeing that in this book it just rubbed my spirit the wrong way. I didn't like it. So I ended up DNFing that one at about 60%. Like I said, I have a lot of books that I would like to get through, and I'm just not going to force myself to read something that I'm not enjoying. Alrighty, so the next thing I read was Binti by Nnedi Okorafor, I believe is how you pronounce her name. And in this story, we are following our main character, Binti, who is the first of her kind to be admitted into UMZA University. So for the first time in her life, Binti leaves home in search of higher education. This is a sci-fi story taking place in space with intergalactic politics. So if you like that, feel free to check it out. I didn't know how to feel about Binti because it's a thing. It's a thing I have with novellas. I don't know. The thing about novellas in general is that oftentimes I feel like the scope of the story is way too big to fit within a couple of 100 pages, and I felt the same way with Binti. Like, in the end, I wanted more. I wanted more world, more character, more plot, more everything basically. And because this is such a short novella, it's impossible for the author to fit so much of a huge world into little bitty tiny 100 pages. Because I was left wanting more, I didn't feel attached to anything that was happening. And another critique I had was the climax. I think that's like the biggest critique I have, was the climax felt very anticlimactic. Like, you have all this build up and it just fell flat for me, and I wish that it had more of a oomph to it, if that makes sense. I didn't give this one a rating because I don't know how to rate such a vast scope written in such a little tiny novel. I am interested in continuing on, but it's definitely not a priority of mine. If any of you have read the graphic novels, if any of you have read the trilogy, feel free to let me know, because if enough people say that it's good, then I will continue on with it. The final book I read in the month of May was a very big surprise for me, and that is going to be The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. Yeah, Lisa Maxwell. Ooh, what can I say about this one? In this story, we are following our main character, Esther, who has to go back in time to become a part of a heist. And that's all you really need to know about it. I know it's a super vague synopsis, but trust me when I say that this was very enjoyable for me. This is a historical fiction fantasy, which isn't something that I do, and I was very hesitant going in it, but I will say it was pretty good. It was pretty good, not gonna lie. Literally in my notes, in my notes, I wrote, "These hoes ain't loyal." The character development, in my opinion, was very well done. Each of them had their very own distinct voice and personality, and I really enjoyed seeing the character interactions and the relationships they had with one another. I also really enjoyed the world. I thought it felt very atmospheric, and I could tell that a lot of work went into researching and building this world, and it was just magnifique. If I had to give it a critique, I would say that maybe it could have been it could have been 100 or so pages shorter, but even that is just like me grabbing at straws, or whatever the saying is. I really enjoyed it. I definitely would recommend it, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Alrighty, so those are all the books I read in the month of May. Feel free to comment down below. Let me know some of the books you read in the month of May. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye!